Good morning, my African friends all over the world. I hope you are okay today. Um, the last time we were talking about how the mind um, actually takes, things, especially a big event like moving, making a big step in your life. And while I was writing this book, actually, uh, I believe God led me to read about this neuroscientist. His name is V.S. Ramachandran. Um, he is a neuroscientist, and he dealt mainly. He's known for inventing what's called a mirror box, and this mirror box is something that actually resolves a problem that happens after somebody has had a limb removed. So what normally happens? Okay, it's not everybody who has a phantom limb pain, um, but some people do, and they were trying to understand why. Because what happens is that somebody actually goes and has their limb removed. Most of the time, it's because there's an infection in the limb that's too much. They're afraid that it's gonna go, to the rest of the body, and or at times it's a cancer or anything like that. So a decision has to be made to remove this limb, because this limb obviously would can destroy has a potential to destroy the rest of the body. So they have to get rid of it. But what happens is, some people, when the limb has been removed, they still feel like it's still there, and they still feel the pain in that limb, which is what they're calling the phantom limb pain, and it's painful. One guy was describing it as if that leg, his limb, was put in boiling water. So he was in more pain than he was before the surgery, to remove it. And they were trying to understand, So this man, this V.S. Ramachandran, was trying to understand, and they obviously understood that uh, the brain is the one that's making him think there is a limb there. And so he's struggling, he's suffering, he's in a lot of pain. And when they looked into it, they realized that um, the brain, when there's a map in your brain, okay, that maps up, that controls every part of your body. So it's mapped to every part of your body. So when your limb is removed, the brain takes a while to actually uh, register and realign those cells that actually control that limb to do something else. So you see how it is. And so when this reassignment apparently is the one that gives this pain, this excruciating pain. And of course, the mirror box is what VS, I'm going to call him VS actually invented, because then it fools the brain. So it's what they do is that you move your arm. If it's an arm, you move the arm that's still there, and there's a mirror there. So that reflection fools the brain into thinking that you are moving that limb that's been removed. And that's a therapy. Some people have to do it a few times until the pain goes away. So you see how I could not help but think about Africa in that context, and think colonization was removed because it was bad for us. It would have destroyed us. But after destroying, after taking it off, after it's gone, we have more pain, we have excruciating pain. Our minds, have not registered that it's not there. And we have more pain than before. And I just could not help but think, a lot of people think, oh, most people, obviously, after the limb has been removed regret having that surgery. They are like, oh, I wish I just left it there, because the pain they're feeling is so bad. And yet, it is what's good for the rest of the body. If that leg was left there, it would have destroyed the whole body. So the reassignment of those cells now to the brain to register that arm is not there anymore, so that it doesn't keep sending messages to an arm that's not there. It takes a while. And apparently for some people, it's months, some a couple of years. So you can see that most of the time we trust our brain, don't we? All the time, but we don't know that all these things can happen. And I know for sure that it will take time for us to realign. There's a guy who was talking actually on TED Talk. He was saying, you know, these cells that have nothing to do, they are a lot of trouble. you know, there's a lot of people, I believe, who had bosses, white bosses or anything, and their fathers are telling them, oh, my white boss was so good. Look at what's happening now. We don't have white bosses. We used to have this and all that, the good things that used to happen. So when people are in limbo, they can really be destroy themselves. So a lot of times I think we have been self-destructive because we are used to um, getting messages from, we're used to actually getting messages from the white people telling us what to do. And now that they're not there, we don't know what we're doing. We're just thinking, what are we going to do? So we have to reassign ourselves. We have to reassign ourselves to duties and realize that no one's going to create a job for me. I'm going to have to try. I'm going to be a boss. There's no unemployment is high. I'm going to create employment. We have to now start thinking like that. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while, but we have to start thinking, I have to how can I create a job? How can I create, income for myself? And usually when you can create for yourself, after a while you're able to create an income for other people as well. And this takes time. So, and that time, can range from, 100 years to, I don't know, but then we still have to realize that we should not be looking for someone to create jobs for us. And, I was fascinated by the fact that, not fascinated, but I mean, I had to question myself why I've seen, Africans who are really afraid of whites. And let me just give an example. This is not in the book, but um, during the time that Mugabe in my country of Zimbabwe, Mugabe was going, and you know what happened with that time, Asante Sana, all those things. Zimbabweans will know what I'm talking about. But what happened was, at that time, everybody was starting to talk about freely, because there was no freedom of speech before, freely about how, oh, this guy was not good and all that stuff, although a lot of people now look back and think, well, he was good. But, we will, but, so there was a drunk white man who was talking in one of the streets. I think it was First Street, He was talking about how bad Mugabe is and all that stuff. This was a drunk white man, and a group of people were surrounded him and listened to him, to this drunk man, you know, listen to what this was 40 years, 37 years after independence. They sat and they were listening to him, and he was talking what I believe mostly rubbish, but perhaps it's because I've been, in Europe now. I've seen, that white people can talk rubbish, but then most people don't know that, this. So, and they were listening to him. They were listening to this man who was talking and criticizing all those things and all that stuff. And everybody was agreeing, clapping hands for him. This is somebody that his own race, if he was talking, they won't listen. They'll say he's drunk. But for us, it was like a rally. People came to listen to a drunk man who was, by the way, just drunk. And it's so painful for me. It's so painful for me. I started to want to find out why. You know, of course, I told you I went on this journey to find out why. And each time I used to see things that would motivate me to actually write about this. And I went to find out about our minds, and I realized that I said to myself, how how frightening must it have been for my grandfather? These people who came and really atrocities that were done, and we will never know the extent of them. We really will never know, because some things are hidden, some things are not. Some records were hidden, and up north in Kenya, they are they I don't know whether they're gonna get their compensation, but the Mau Mau uprising is something that is still being discussed right now. The cruelty that was done, and people put into camps and all that stuff. The same thing happened in Southern Africa. Southern Africans are, you know, perhaps they're not the kind of people who, I don't know why we don't want to find out our history, the pain in our history. It's very important. It's therapeutic for us. We cannot just forget about it. Something I didn't mention in this book, but that's important. I've been reading books written by this lady called Joy DeGruy. She actually, I don't know whether she discovered or she researched and found out, the post-traumatic syndrome that's slaves. It's funny because people will talk about the trauma of accidents, the trauma of, of Jews, Holocaust, but nobody ever wanted to talk about the trauma of slavery, something that went on for so long, the trauma of colonization. Nobody wants to go and research about it. They don't want to research about it. And I went and I was reading. I wanted to find out that fear, what makes somebody listen to, to someone who's drunk, no matter, and revere them, even when they're in their drunk state. So, but I mean, how did we get to a place where we sign documents that were not written in our language? I had to find out. So I went to imagine my grandfather. By the way, my father was called Makiwa, and it's because he was born when his father had gone on an errand. White people. Makiwa means white people. So I was thinking, and the response our body has, it's a fight or flight, response. I was just imagining him there. And I'm thinking to myself, when we think about how people feared white people, how they revered white people, and I was thinking to myself, at that moment, that fight or flight response, how come it still lives in me? How come I still, tremble when I see those people? I'm not saying I tremble because, of course, now it doesn't come across as trembling. It doesn't. It comes across as it's sort of disguised as respect or something like that. but somehow, I give them, the benefit of the doubt. I credit them with everything that I am not. How did I come about? So I bumped into somebody who was talking about phobias, and scientists have realized that phobias can actually be inherited. So a fear can actually go from one generation to another. Why do I still feel? Because fight or flight, you know what it is. When you see something which is frightening, okay, inside there are chemical reactions that go inside of you, and then you either have to fight the thing or flight and flee. Okay, so that is something that's supposed to happen for that short time. But then how come? How come I'm still feeling it, man? Because I was not, I was not tortured, I was not subjugated, I was nothing like that happened to me. It happened to my forefathers. But how do I still have that same feeling that they had towards white people? I was just asking myself, and obviously there's not much written about colonization. And then I had to read books, Joy DeGruy, amazing woman. You should listen to her. And she talks about the trauma of slavery and how it is. She's written several books, and she has awakened people to the fact that when people tell you that, colonization is a long time ago, it's gone. No, it's not. There are still, we can still see people frightened, revering today. So it's important for us to find out why that's happening. There must be an inherited thing. If they can prove that the Holocaust survivors, okay, actually inherited in their genes, through epigenetics, it's a whole topic about that. That fear, the same applies to us. And nobody's going to go in and give us compensation or reparation or anything like that. That topic, it will be too much for us to pay us back. But then the effect that all these had on ourselves as beings has to be discussed in order for us to come out of this. What was put in our subconscious mind for a child like me who straddled, colonization on one side and freedom on the other, there is a tug of war going on in my head. And if I'm raising children with that kind of uh, dissonance, that kind of mind that I don't know what I'm doing. If I'm raising children, if I don't know whether to bow down to whites or then they're gonna be messed up. And it's only 40 years since the independence. So we're not done. We're not done getting rid of this. Because the truth about it is that our children will copy our behaviors. So when I looked into this, I realized that, oh my God, a phobia can be inherited. It can be, inherited. So I realized that a fear that my parents had, my forefathers had, I can have that fear. That moment, no matter how long it lasted, if it's a life-changing moment, it will alter the way he looks at things. And therefore it will alter the genes that he passes on to me. I didn't know that until I had to find out. I didn't know that. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I realized that we're still fighting a mind game. It's not just the mind. If it's in me too. I realize that's what explains the fact that a drunk white man can actually talk to people and they listen to him. And for that reason, if we are in Africa and thinking, if white people were here, things would be fine. We're never going to find out. We're never going to try and discover what we can do. Right now, I don't want to go to be political or anything, but farming, Zimbabweans were farmers by traditional farmers before colonization. But you find most people saying, no, we need white people to farm for us. We were traditional farmers. I mean, we farmed before. That was our living. That's how we lived. We were moved into reserves, into small little places. And in 1931, I think, it became illegal for a black person to own lands in fertile, a fertile land. We were just pushed into reserve, but we were farmers. We were traditional farmers. And now suddenly everybody thinks we're not good at farming. Something happened in us that made us forget who we are. We completely forgot who we are. We are trying to grab onto becoming white and raise our children as white as possible. And we're leaving something that is within us. Farming, those things that are within us that they learned from us. I mean, all those people who owned farms, the laborers were black people. They labored. They know exactly what was going on there. But somehow we don't know what to do. We need therapy. And it's easy. I had to open my eyes and I had to take a self-awareness and ask every time I responded to somebody who was talking to me who was white and ask myself, am I acting myself? Am I being myself or am I acting? I need to do that. It's a painful journey, but you have to take it. Before you can see, you can find who you are and be able to create things yourself, you need to go back to being yourself. That's the bottom line. So anyway, sorry, this is very passionate topic for me. So I tend to stray, but I wanted to just talk about the fact that a phobia is actually something that you can inherit. Scientists have proved that. And the fear, talk about the fear, that fear that you might look as, I've been to places where people will say they 100% trust a white person, but they'll never trust a black person. So many people say that. You're talking about not trusting yourself. Someone is saying the same, another black person is saying the same about you. They're saying they don't trust you. And you're saying you don't trust them. How are we going to rebuild ourselves? How are we going to look at our resources and be able to, to use them, to put them to full use if we can't even trust each other? That mistrust was put in colonization. That is the